Shalom, family. Good to see you here. Hope you're doing well. Boy, it's been a long day for me, that's for sure. So, I hope everybody is enjoying your evening right now. Well, they just dropped, the DOJ just dropped some more thousands of pages of the Epstein files. And I was looking at the timing of this, and I think they dropped it at this time because they're hoping that people will be so tied up and busy focusing on the holidays that they won't look at these Epstein files. Well, he's wrong because people are definitely looking at the Epstein files and they're online chattering about it. So this one is pretty bad, y'all. There is an incident in there that speaks of Donald Trump and Epstein graping a woman at the same time. And Donald Trump's name appears again, just like it did the last time. Uh, Pages drop multiple times, and it's not good. It's not good. You know, if this was, let's be honest with you, y'all, if Donald Trump was a black man, his ass would be in jail. You know how incriminating this stuff is that's coming out in the Epstein files. And as people read through the thousands of pages, it's going to be even more damaging things that are going to come out. Now, Pam Bondi is trying to make everybody believe, well, it might say these things, but it doesn't make it true. Then what would be the purpose in putting Ghislaine Maxwell in jail if things are written, but it's not true? Then doesn't that kind of diminish the fact that she's behind bars? So, yeah, I think before it's all said and done, I will not be surprised if Pam Bondi is debarred. Seriously, she loses her ability to practice law. But her and Cash Patel, they are a trip. They got every excuse under the sun for Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, it's not going to do any good. And it just proves once again what many people have been saying. Donald Trump is only the sitting president because he fears going to jail. And when you read these files, that's exactly where he belongs. He doesn't need to be no sitting president. He needs to be behind bars for real. So let me share my screen. Oh, before we get started, I just want to, let me see here. I just want to give you a reminder. This is the final day to get your 30% off of 12 Tribes on Earth hair products. So you have until midnight to get in your order. If you want to take advantage of the discount, this is the final day. So I did put some butter and edge growth butter out there. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get more Botana oil out until at least another 24 hours. So, but that will be coming out nevertheless. So, everybody, if you want that last minute discount, you still have time to get it. All right. See if I can get rid of that. Here we go. All right. Give me a one if you can see my screen. All right. Thank you.
released over 30,000 more documents from the Epstein files. To no shock to any of us, the US government came out to defend the president like a personal lawyer is defending a president, saying that even though we're releasing these documents, the claims are baseless and the claims are false. Isn't that strange? There are two really incriminating and damning pieces of evidence. One is a letter that Jeffrey Epstein sent to Dr. Nasser, who was also a egregious person that was an Olympic coach that was abusing women and young girls, in which he was stating that unfair that they were in jail for their love of young women when Donald Trump also loves young girls and shares the love for young women, which is disgusting. We've had this letter since 2019. The letter has existed since 2019. The Associated Press reported on this letter in 2023. But now, all of a sudden, within a couple of hours of this letter being made public, the DOJ has deemed it to be fake. Whenever Donald Trump's administration says something is fake news, it's usually true. And that we know to be true. Second is proof that Donald Trump paid to sexually abuse a young woman multiple times. He participated regularly in paying to force me to have sex with him. And he was present when my uncle murdered my newborn child and buried it in Lake Michigan. This is talking about our current president, Donald Trump. And the fact that the government comes out and says, oh, these files are fake. Oh, the letter Jeffrey Epstein made is fake. All the claims against Trump was fake. So everybody else in the files is considered guilty and real, like Bill Clinton, but everything in regards to Trump is fake. This is who you guys are supporting. I wonder what all the pro-life people are going to say about this. I wonder what all the MAGA people, the Christian, the evangelicals, how can you support this man? It's like nothing he does makes you guys be like, oh, this is my come to Jesus moment. This is 2 pieces of information out of 30,000 documents released. And all the other documents that have been heavily redacted, what else could be in them? We'll have to wait and see.
DP757, a.k.a. Big Pop. Look, Mr. Trump, our president of the United States of America, free world, dealing with these Jeffrey Epstein files, which can get crazy. It's getting kind of crazy. But as I said, the victims know. They know. But I think when they thought they released some files and Trump was like sending his sympathy to these Bill Clinton and others who feel like they being dragged through the mud, all this in the same time. Pam Bondi and Cabrera, them, they doing their best to make sure Trump come out. What comes out about him is selective and at a minimum, you know. It makes him look crazy, but it's not letting the truth out. And the victims know the truth. And some of their lawyers know the truth. Some have been privy to this information back when they did the real investigation. So they know when it comes out what's being held. Then they're waiting on it. But anyway, I'm trying to figure out, we said victim, we found victim, but the women in the Senate not showing sympathy to the victims. Susan Murkowski, I think she's on something, trying to do something like that. I mean, it's a little too late for that shit. He had plenty of time to rectify this shit. In the House, nope. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she done slid on to the other side now in support of that, but that's not there. But like I said, Pam Bondi, a woman, there's no sympathy for these women, for these young women that was victimized, exploited by the rich, not by no poor or middle class motherfucker. All of them thousand there, no, rich. And the thing about this shit here, you have seen movies, you have seen read books, articles, and all this shit for years and years and years. This shit has always been going on. The rich and famous, those with the money, have always been exploiting people of all different races and nationalities and ages. We know this. These are facts. So when the Republican Party or MAGA, when y'all started pointing fingers at the so-called what the Democrats doing, supposed to be animal eaters, pedophiles, and so on and so on and so on. You was not looking in your own front yard. You was looking beyond your own front yard and seeing all the pervertedness that was going on and has been going on. And if you want to play stupid, if you want to play dumb, if you want to play ignorant, if you want to play misinformed, uneducated, and so on and so on, when you see exactly what's going on here, you see the cover up, you know Trump is actually fighting not to let certain files come out. And when they do come out, redactions and omissions are all over the place. Now, it don't take a rocket scientist to figure out, something is going on here. Not at all. But you act like you're so intelligent, you're so goddamn smart, but you don't want to accept the facts unless it's coming from the Democratic side or the so-called radical left. Then you embrace it, kiss it, cuddle with it, enjoy it. But when the truth is in your face and it's working against you, can't stomach it, can you? Just can't do it. Trump is coming up. Trump is in those files, and Trump is in those files deep. Now, whether you accept the fact or not, that don't change the facts. That don't change the truth, whether you accept it or not. But when the truth do come out, he might be dead and gone when it all come out. But the bits and pieces that you get, it don't take nobody. You can always put one and one together, come up with two. Peace.
I am no longer supporting this administration. I redact any support I've ever given to him, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. I am so disgusted with this administration. I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both need to resign. And I would love to see number 47 get impeached over this.
I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. A lot of people are very angry that pictures are being released of other people that really had nothing to do with Epstein, but they're in a picture with him because he was at a party, and you ruin the reputation of somebody.
If you're telling the public
So really, Donald Trump is only concerned about the perpetrators' pictures being shown. That's all he's concerned about. Oh, well, Bill Clinton, we know what Bill Clinton is, just like we know what Donald Trump is. So Donald Trump's only concern in this whole thing are the perpetrators that went to Epstein and violated these teens and girls. That's his only concern, them being seen in pictures. But as far as Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, somewhere down the line, Donald Trump will either turn on them or they'll end up resigning on their own. That's what I think will happen. I think his cabinet is not going to stay intact. I really don't. Because I watched Kristi Noem. She did a 30-minute Q&A in front of one of their committees. They slaughtered her. And I think many of them are not going to be able to hang on. Donald Trump is putting too much pressure on his cabinet to hide his secrets. And somewhere down the line, they're going to get tired of it. They are. Because they're already getting dragged over it. It's just a matter of time.
in the world and the survivors, that just because somebody's in a picture with him doesn't automatically mean they were involved in the crimes against children, which I understand. And I get that fully. Then why are you so scared to release the files, and why has there been so much resistance? If it's just a picture, why are you going above and beyond to hide the identities of these men? And I do believe, because of all the shame and guilt the survivors have gone through and the public scrutiny and the backlash that we've received and the shame and embarrassment that doesn't even belong to us. It belongs to the men that continue to have business and personal relationships with a known pedophile and his accomplice.
So
the embarrassment and shame belongs to them, Trump included.
And we should note, Trump has not been accused of criminal wrongdoing, but as you said, he is named in these files. There are pictures.
All right, folks, look, we have to talk about this because it is not getting enough attention, and it is very obviously something that Donald Trump is trying to sweep under the rug right now. So in the most recent drop of the Epstein files, there are a number of documents that accuse Donald Trump of very serious crimes. Now, I will say before we get into any of this, what we're looking at here are FBI tips that have been submitted where someone somewhere in the country is alleging that something happened. It does not mean that it is true. It does not mean it was proven in a court beyond a reasonable doubt. So take these FBI tips, of course, with a grain of salt, but they are in the Epstein files, and Trump doesn't want us to talk about it, which is weird in and of itself. So we're going to get into all of this. Make sure to subscribe down below, drop a like on the video, comment, let me know what you think about this. And if you think any of this is true or none of it or all of it, you let me know. I'm excited to hear from you. But first, let's start with the DOJ statement actually addressing this very topic. So yesterday at 7:30 in the morning, after they dropped the Epstein files in the middle of the night while everyone was asleep, the DOJ put out a statement saying some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against Trump. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they had a shred of credibility, they would have been used against Donald Trump already. They specifically used the word weaponized, which is crazy in this context. It sounds more of like a statement from a Trump spokesperson rather than a statement from an agency that is meant to be independent. But we've now learned, in addition to this story, that this account, this Department of Justice account, has been taken over by the White House. So that's why it kind of reads like this. But what's weird about these documents is that these FBI tips we're about to look at, in the Epstein files, there is no documentation on whether they actually followed up on these tips. There's no investigation. So either they didn't investigate or they did investigate and the files aren't included. So we shall go through them now. Let's start here where prosecutors, and this is Steve Bannon, who we've seen a lot of photos of with Epstein in recent days as part of all these files coming out. But prosecutors reviewed Steve Bannon's iPhone as part of their We Build a Wall scam, where he was investigated and indicted for it. And they found a lot of text messages between him and Jeffrey Epstein, but they also found a photo of Donald Trump. This email says, it's in 2021, "I hope you're well. I'm helping out with the responsiveness review for WBTW." And that's the We Build the Wall. "And I've been looking through Steve Bannon's iPhone 7 on Cellbrite. As I was going through the images from that phone, I found an image of Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell on his phone. See screenshot from Cellbrite attached. They have not released that photo. That photo was not part of the Epstein files." Weird, right? But I want to also point out that this email was sent in 2021. So this was after Trump was president. And they're saying they found this photo on Steve Bannon's phone. What photo is it of Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell? They haven't released that photo. I think that's pretty weird, but that's just one part of this. Also, they also followed up on this email saying, "I wanted to let you know that there are a number of text messages between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein on Bannon's iPhone 7. They aren't responsive to our warrant." I think we should see those text messages, don't you? I think those text messages should come out. I think that's probably part of the Epstein files, no? Or at least should be part of the Epstein files. I think we should see those text messages. Here's another one, a pretty bombshell claim that is coming from Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein. He confirmed that this message, this tip to the FBI came from him, and he still believes this claim to this day. So back in 2023, Mark Epstein submitted a tip, and it reads, quote, "Jeffrey," down here under the submitted text, "Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in his jail cell. I have reason to believe he was killed because he was about to name names. I believe Trump authorized the murder." Now, I said this already. I feel the need to say it again. Of course, we don't know this. Well, I should say this is a tip to the FBI. It is not certain. We don't have full evidence confirming that this happened, but this is coming from a relative of Epstein who probably knows more than the public, you'd imagine. And him saying this and making this claim and standing by it today, not just in 2023, today, is pretty concerning.
We just got some major new releases from the Epstein files, and it's not looking good for the Trump administration. Because it's the holiday season, I felt like there was no better time to talk about everybody's favorite Christmas character, this man right here. Yesterday, the DOJ released a ton of new files, a lot of which directly mentioned Donald Trump. Now, you may be asking why they decided to release this now, and I think that's a good question. Because if you remember my last video we did on the Epstein files, the Trump administration was mandated by Congress to release all the Epstein files fully unredacted. They did not do that. They only released 1% of the files they had, and they blatantly broke the law. So now why would they release a bunch of files a week later after they already broke the law? This may be because people online figured out how to unredact the files they released. How unbelievably incompetent does your administration have to be? To the point where a bunch of people on the internet are able to fully unredact your classified documents. It was a complete and utter disaster, so they ended up releasing some of the files that they had. Some of which are so bad that I'm giving a trigger warning to people who are sensitive to the topic of SA. One new document shows that Trump was on the Epstein flight log way more than initially thought, including multiple trips with Ghislaine Maxwell herself, and a horrific story of Trump assaulting a young woman as well. Now, the DOJ, which is basically just serving as Trump's personal law firm at this point, released a memo saying that all mentions of Trump in the Epstein files are untrue or highly sensationalized. And they're saying this because the only files they released about Trump were tips to the FBI. Now, some suspect that this only allows them to appear as transparent when in reality they may be holding significantly worse information. Even with this information itself, this is unbelievably disgusting and horrible. I'm sure some people in the MAGA cult will try and say that all of this is just fake news, that it's all just tips and nothing highly substantiated. But can you imagine if the roles were reversed, if this was Biden or Obama, what they would be saying right now? Mind you, the same people who are probably going to defend their president assaulting kids, over 56% of those people believed in QAnon. In fact, these conspiracy theories were even pushed by Trump himself. And not only has he been pushing these conspiracy theories because he knows it adds fuel to the fire that is his followers, when he realized he was going to get caught up in the middle of it, he tried to back away as quickly as possible. This entire administration is lying to you. They think you're stupid. They think they can hide this right in front of your eyes. Everyone in this administration who is breaking the law by not releasing the fully unredacted files like Congress mandated should be held fully accountable. This goes beyond politics. This is a nonpartisan issue. In no way should the government break the law and hide a scandal at this scale. And I hope we see justice for all involved.
Okay, so we have some breaking news. Newly released Justice Department records show that Donald Trump was named in a serious sexual assault allegation connected to Jeffrey Epstein. It's right here. This is proof. Here's the PDF file that you can look for yourself on the FBI website before it's gone. An FBI intake report dated October 27, 2020 documents a claim related to federal authorities involving a woman who said she was sexually assaulted by Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump together. This is an actual allegation that was reported to the FBI. The claim was not mentioned in court yet. Trump has obviously denied any and all wrongdoing, and he has never been charged in connection with any Epstein's crimes. So Jeffrey Epstein, who was obviously convicted of sex offenses, died in federal custody in 2019. Legal experts note that the FBI intake report document claims are, as of now, claims and not conclusions, but we'll see where it goes. Advocates say allegations involving powerful figures deserve public scrutiny when they appear in official FBI records. So this is what the document says. Here it is one more time for you to look at, okay? The full context absolutely matters, and we need to know more about this one.
We got another Epstein file dump of about 30,000 documents from the Justice Department this morning. And this time, we got documents that talk about President Trump, co-conspirators that the U.S. government said didn't exist, and even some questionable emails that appear to be from Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew, the son of the late Queen Elizabeth II. Now, I went through most of this stuff for hours today. Now, this drop is mostly documents and very few pictures. It has court filings, emails between investigators, scheduling of victim testimony, court filings, and there were a few pieces of evidence from Epstein and Maxwell. But unlike the last dump of documents, today's drop came with a warning from the Department of Justice. It says some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they had a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. So today, out of nowhere, the DOJ is just randomly warning us that the items in this drop that reference President Trump are untrue and sensationalized. let's be clear. The DOJ has not released any such statement about anyone else whose name or image has been released in connection with these Epstein documents. Strange that they did it today. But what's also strange is why the DOJ released that statement. Perhaps it's because they were anticipating people would find this letter from J. Epstein to another prolific pedophile, Larry Nassar, dated August of 2019. In the letter, the writer says to Nassar, "We share one thing, our love and caring for young ladies." The letter goes on to say, "Our president," who in 2019 was Donald Trump, "also shares our love of young, nubile girls." The letter also appears to address Epstein's suicide by saying, "As you know by now, I have taken the short route home." Almost immediately after that letter started to be reported widely, the DOJ put out yet another unusual statement, this time looking into the validity of that particular letter, questioning whether it was true or not. It says there were a couple of things that were off about the letter, including that the postmark on the envelope is Virginia, not New York, where Epstein was jailed at the time, and pointed out the return address listed the wrong jail where Epstein was held and did not include Epstein's inmate number, which is required for outgoing mail. I didn't highlight it, but it also says the envelope was processed 3 days after Epstein's death, which seemed a little fishy. But the DOJ didn't leave it there. Just 2 hours after that last statement, they put out yet another statement saying that for sure that letter was fake. They said that because the FBI confirmed it was fake due to the fact that they said the handwriting does not match Epstein's. And just in case you missed the first warning, the DOJ writes again, as a reminder, just because a document is released by the Department of Justice does not make the allegations or claims within the document factual. But there is one document that is absolutely not fake that involves Donald Trump. It is this email chain titled Epstein Flight Records, dated Wednesday, January 8th of 2020. And this email chain is from the U.S. government's own prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. The assistant U.S. attorney in that office is writing this email and appears to be in shock about what was found and is warning somebody else, "Hey, I'm just flagging you on this in case you see it." So what was found? Right there, the assistant U.S. attorney says, "Wanted to let you know that the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously had been reported or that we were aware." It goes on to talk about how Trump is listed as a passenger on Epstein's jet at least 8 separate times between 1993 and 1996. At least 4 of those times, Ghislaine Maxwell was also on that plane. It goes on to say that Trump was on the plane with his then wife and his kids, but then it says on one flight, according to the assistant U.S. attorney here in the Southern District of New York, the only passengers listed on the Epstein jet manifest were Epstein, Trump, and a then 20-year-old whose name is redacted. And then on 2 other flights, 2 of the passengers were women who would then become witnesses against Ghislaine Maxwell. Donald Trump's name appears in some other evidence included in today's drop that also does not appear to be fake. Now, there are a series of phone messages that look like this, dated from 2004 and 2005. All of them are phone messages for Mr. J.E. or J.E., Jeffrey Epstein. This one you can see is from September of 2004. And the message to Mr. J.E. is, "She has females for Mr. J.E." In this one from November of 2004 to, again, Mr. J.E., it says, "I have a female for him." And in this one from January of 2005, again to J.E., the message is, "I have a female for him." Then there was this picture of 4 messages, all to J.E. These appear to be from November of 2004. Pay attention to this one to J.E. that is from 5:15 p.m. and it is a message from Donald Trump. So we know that Trump and Epstein were still in contact around 2004 and 2005. There's also another document in today's drop that is not fake and absolutely contradicts what Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel said over the summer when they decided to close this Epstein case. At the time, they said they were closing the case because they had thoroughly investigated the Epstein and Maxwell cases and there were no other people involved, and therefore there would be no prosecutions of anyone else. But then today we saw this email from July of 2019 from the FBI in New York, which asks, "When you get a chance, can you give me an update on the status of the 10 co-conspirators. Then the next month, there's this email from the NYPD FBI Child Exploitation Human Trafficking Task Force with the subject line, Epstein co-conspirator pics. 10 co-conspirators? Co-conspirator pics? I thought Pam Bondi and Kash Patel said there were no other co-conspirators. Now all of a sudden there are 10? Now, it is possible that some of those co-conspirators being referenced in that email could also be victims, because we know Jeffrey Epstein used his victims to recruit more girls for him, and that would technically make them co-conspirators, but they could also be talking about other men who were involved or who at least knew about Epstein trafficking these young girls. The last thing I want to point out to you is this series of emails from Ghislaine Maxwell to someone called the Invisible Man. This is from August of 2001, and the Invisible Man asks Ghislaine Maxwell, have you found me some new inappropriate friends? It's signed Sia A. So who is A? Well, the first line might give it away. It says, I'm up here at Balmoral summer camp for the royal family. In case you didn't know, the British royal family goes to Balmoral Castle every summer between like late July and early October. So A could be then Prince Andrew, who was also a known associate of Ghislaine Maxwell. Oh, no, that's not where it ends. Ghislaine Maxwell responds to the Invisible Man saying, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I have only been able to find appropriate friends. To which the Invisible Man responds, distraught. Then goes on to talk about how he has lost his valet, who's been with him since he was 2 years old. I mean, I don't know who else would be going to Balmoral Castle with the letter A, who also has had a valet since the age of 2, other than perhaps Prince Andrew. So after that exchange, a short time later, of course, it was exposed that Andrew had ties to not only Ghislaine Maxwell, but also some Epstein survivors, to which the then Duke of York, Prince Andrew, put out this official statement in November of 2019 saying, of course, I am willing to help any appropriate law enforcement agency with their investigations if required. Well, the U.S. Department of Justice said, bet, we want your help in this, Prince Andrew. To which, just a few months later, Andrew's lawyers sent this email to the US DOJ that said that the prince was not happy with the treatment he was getting from the US Department of Justice. So his lawyers said, we cannot advise the Duke to speak to prosecutors who cannot be trusted to deal with him fairly.
The government accidentally unredacted a file of Trump having fun with one of Jeffrey Epstein's mystery girl.
In case you were wondering whether or not the Department of Justice is redacting the Epstein files to hide Donald Trump's name from them, they 100% are, and I'll prove it to you right now. I was just sent an email that shows the Department of Justice under Attorney General Pam Bondi may have made an embarrassing mistake by releasing 2 of the exact same documents, identical papers, one with Donald Trump's name and the other with Donald Trump's name blacked out throughout the entire page. As you can see, the first document on the top outlines a girl's relations with Donald Trump and everything that happened, and the bottom document shows the exact same paragraph, but Trump's name blacked out in every single instance. In case you want to check yourself, the document with the redactions is 1296-17. The document without the redactions is 1332-16. This then begs the question, how many other documents in the 2.5 gigabytes that were released, despite there being 300 gigabytes that are still being held by the...
We're now learning that the names of politicians were redacted from the Epstein files today, and that likely includes Donald Trump's name. So Fox News, of all people, reported earlier today that the Justice Department redacted names and identifiers of victims, which is good, that is required by the law. But also, Fox News Digital has learned that these same redaction standards were applied to politically exposed individuals and government officials, which means that people like Donald Trump think it's as important for their name to be redacted as it is for the victims' names.
Well, that's really weird because I looked through the files and Donald Trump's name is in there and it's not redacted. Yeah, which is weird because if Donald Trump was trying to protect himself, why then is his name unredacted in the files? And what do you mean that Fox News has learned that certain politically exposed persons and politicians' names were redacted? Because Congress, when they passed the transparency law, actually required it. Yeah, see, look, you can see right here when Congress passed the Transparency Act, they actually required certain categories of people and information to be redacted. Victims, for example, and stuff down here, things that are established by an executive order to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. But this one right here is the one that Fox News apparently just learned about. Things that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. You see, now, this is the weird part, because if Donald Trump was trying to protect himself, then he would be redacting his own name under that category. And yet Donald Trump's name is all over the Epstein files. And in every instance of his name, as we've always known, it shows that he did nothing wrong. But you know whose names are quite possibly the ones that are redacted? The people that have been funding and supporting, and that Harry has been rubbing elbows with for the last several years, Democrats. That's whose names are probably hidden behind those redactions. You see, the reason why you're not seeing a bunch of politicians' names show up in those files like you would expect is because Donald Trump has ordered the Department of Justice to investigate the Democrats that have been involved with Jeffrey Epstein, like Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, J.P. Morgan Chase, and many others like Catherine Rumler, who now we know was best friends and possibly the attorney for Jeffrey Epstein. This is why you're not seeing a whole bunch of politicians' names. It's because they're under investigation for the crimes that they possibly committed. And most of those names that are under redaction right now and under investigation are the exact people that Harry has been shilling for.
You've seen the headlines. You've seen the frantic updates on social media, the capitalized letters screaming about justice, retribution, and the end of the republic. It feels like we are watching the season finale of a particularly dark reality show, one where the writers have decided to throw every possible plot twist at the wall to see what sticks. But I want you to pause for a second, turn down the volume on the spectacle, and look at what is actually happening underneath the noise. Because if you strip away the partisan shouting, what we are witnessing right now isn't just a legal battle or a political feud. It is a negotiation. It is a high-stakes transaction between factions of the American ruling class played out with the one currency that holds more value in Washington than the dollar itself: leverage. The story, as it's being reported, is that Donald Trump is cornered. Facing the very real prospect of a prison sentence, he has reportedly pulled out what supporters and detractors alike are calling the nuclear option. Sources claim, and I want to be clear, that these are reports from insiders, not yet verified court documents, that he has threatened to release a personal copy of the unredacted Epstein client list. The message being sent to the establishment is blunt and transactional. If I go to jail, everyone goes with me. Now, on the surface, this looks like simple blackmail. It looks like the desperate flailing of a man running out of exits. But if we look at this through the lens of economics and class power, we see something far more systemic. We see the mechanisms of how the elite protect themselves and what happens when that protection racket begins to fracture. You have to ask yourself why this particular threat holds so much weight. Why does the mere mention of this list cause such a visceral tremor through the corridors of power, from Wall Street boardrooms to the Senate floor? It's because that list is not just a roster of names. It is a map of the intersection between capital, political influence, and unchecked exploitation. It represents a network of impunity that has functioned for decades, allowing the ultra-wealthy to operate outside the laws that you and I have to follow. When we talk about a two-tiered justice system, this is the architecture of it. It's a system built on a mutual understanding, a silence, an omerta that ensures that as long as everyone plays by the rules of the club, everyone stays safe. What we are seeing now is one member of that club threatening to break the seal. Think about what this means for you. You go to work every day, you pay your taxes. If you miss a rent payment or default on a small loan, the consequences are immediate and often devastating. The machinery of the economy is designed to hold you accountable for every cent and every second. But at the level of the people reportedly on that list, accountability is a negotiable asset. It is something to be traded, managed, and suppressed. The fact that a former president can allegedly use the threat of exposing crimes as a bargaining chip for his own freedom tells us everything we need to know about the commodity of justice in a capitalist framework. It suggests that the rule of law is not a fixed standard, but a market fluctuation subject to supply and demand. Let's dig into the official story a bit deeper. The narrative is that Trump, during his time in the White House, retained access to these documents. Now, facing incarceration, he is using them to deadlock the system. We are hearing that Supreme Court justices and key senators are hesitating, not because of legal precedent, but because of reputational risk. This creates a fascinating and terrifying deadlock. It's a version of mutually assured destruction, but instead of nuclear warheads, the silos are loaded with the dirty laundry of the American elite. And this isn't just about embarrassing a few politicians. If the rumors are true, this list implicates CEOs, royals, and power brokers across the global economy. The instability that such a leak would cause isn't just political, it's economic. It threatens the legitimacy of the institutions that manage global capital. When you hear pundits ask, is he bluffing? They are asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether he has the PDF file ready to upload. The question is, does he have the structural power to force a settlement? In economics, we talk about barriers to entry and monopoly power. Usually the state has a monopoly on violence and incarceration. But here, we see a private actor, albeit a former head of state, attempting to break that monopoly by weaponizing information. He is effectively saying that the cost of incarcerating him is higher than the system can bear. He is betting that the preservation of the system's legitimacy, the need to keep the curtain pulled tight over the wizard, is more important to the establishment than punishing one man. And where does that leave us? Where does that leave the public interest? It leaves us as spectators to a power struggle that has nothing to do with democracy and everything to do with self-preservation. It reveals that the stability of our political system relies heavily on secrets. It relies on the assumption that the people at the top will protect each other to maintain the status quo. When that solidarity cracks, we get a glimpse of the rot inside. You might feel a certain schadenfreude, a desire to see it all burn down, to see the secrets spilled and the mighty fall. That's a natural reaction, but we need to be analytical here. If this information comes out, it won't be because of a triumph of justice. It will be because a deal fell through. It will be collateral damage in a war between elites. This brings us to the background of how we got here. We didn't arrive at this moment by accident. This situation is the product of decades of deregulation, financialization, and the steady erosion of public accountability. We have allowed the accumulation of wealth to become so extreme that it has created a class of people who believe they are untouchable. Epstein wasn't an anomaly. He was a service provider. He provided a service to a class of people who are used to buying whatever they want, whenever they want it, without consequence. The economy we live in incentivizes this behavior. It rewards ruthless accumulation and shields the winners from the social costs of their actions. When you look at your own life, think about the rules that constrain you. Think about the credit score that determines where you can live, the background check that determines where you can work. Those are systems of control. They are designed to manage the working class. But at the top, the only control is leverage. The only check on power is other power. That is what we are watching. We are watching a hostile takeover bid for the justice system. And just like in a corporate raid, the assets are being valued, the liabilities are being calculated, and the fate of the company, in this case, the country, hangs in the balance. The irony, of course, is palpable. A man who built his brand on the projection of wealth and power is now using the ultimate symbol of elite corruption, the Epstein file, as his shield. It's a Ouroboros of scandal, a snake eating its own tail. But we cannot afford to just be entertained by this. We have to understand the mechanics of it. We have to understand that this threat is only possible because the system was built to keep secrets in the first place. If justice were truly blind, if the law applied equally to the billionaire and the bus driver, there would be no leverage. The list would have been public years ago. The crimes would have been prosecuted. The fact that they weren't, the fact that this information has been hoarded and hidden, is what gives it its value now. It has been banked like a savings bond, maturing over time, waiting for a rainy day. Well, it's pouring rain right now. I want you to think about the institutions involved here. We are talking about the Department of Justice, the intelligence agencies, the courts. These are the pillars of the state, and yet they seem paralyzed. Why? Because in a capitalist democracy, political power is often just an extension of economic power, and the economic power represented on that list is likely staggering. We are talking about the people who own the banks, the media companies, the defense contractors. To indict that network is to indict the engine of the American economy itself. That is the calculation being made behind closed doors. It's a cost-benefit analysis. Is the cost of letting Trump walk lower than the cost of blowing up the entire ruling class? This is why I always tell you to follow the incentives. Don't listen to the speeches about no one is above the law. Look at the incentives. The incentive for the establishment is survival. The incentive for Trump is survival. And when two survival instincts clash, things get ugly. But notice, who is not at the negotiating table? You aren't. The victims aren't. The working class isn't. We are the collateral. We are the ones who will have to live with the consequences of whatever deal is cut or whatever chaos is unleashed. If the list leaks, the fallout will impact trust in every institution we rely on. If it doesn't leak, it means a deal was made and justice was sold. Either way, the system reveals its true nature. Let's look at the mechanics of this leverage. How does a single USB drive or a cloud password hold an entire government hostage? It comes down to the concept of systemic risk. In 2008, we were told that certain banks were too big to fail because their collapse would pull down the entire economy. What we are seeing now is the political equivalent. Individuals who are too big to jail because their exposure would pull down the legitimacy of the entire state. The people reportedly on this list aren't just random individuals. They are nodes in the power structure.
And, and that's the problem in this country. Nobody should be too big to jail. It seems like when it comes down to the white male, especially wealthy white males, they always got some excuse on why they don't go to jail for crimes, or they can buy their way out, or they get the most minimal sentences. And it shouldn't be that way at all. Nobody, if nobody's above the law, then everybody should be sentenced the same across the board. But we don't live in that world. We live in this one, which is very corrupt. And it's all about who you are instead of being based on the crime you committed. That's the way it is here. So, y'all, all I see is a bunch of files coming out and no arrest, even with Prince Andrew. And the proof they found that he violated young underage women. What did they do? Just took some title away from him and pushed him off into another mansion. That ain't no punishment. What the hell? That ain't no punishment. And it just goes to show you the system is scared to go after an extremely wealthy white man. And that's what it comes down to. If you are wealthy and white and you have influence out here, the system is saying, okay, I know what you did was horrible, but we're just gonna let you get away. And if we do punish you, we might do something like fine you $100,000 or something ridiculous. That's what they do. But when somebody like myself, if I commit a crime, they want to be all hard and heavy-handed on someone like me for a crime that's a lot less than what's going on in these Epstein files. They want to give you 20 years to life. This whole place is ridiculous. It must go. Do people sit around talking about some reset? It doesn't need to be a reset. No reset. Get this place the fuck out of here. That's the only thing this place needs to go. The people running it need to go. It is too corrupt. We don't need no reset with the same people in charge. That's what these Epstein files are showing us. We can't continue on with these same people. They have proven themselves to be unfit for the power that they have. So, y'all, I am going to go ahead and conclude. Yeah, the Most High will destroy Donald Trump, and it is happening. It is happening. So, y'all, let me tell you something. This thing is going to explode. It's no way. This thing just dropped and it's 30,000 pages. So it is going to take weeks or even a few months for people to get through all of these files. And you heard what they said. The average person online has learned how to unredact the files. I mean, that just right there just goes to show you how advanced many people are in the public, y'all. They can redact a file and they can find a way to unredact it online. That says a lot right there. That tells you the public is way more sophisticated than they would like to believe right there. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. I would have came on a lot sooner, but it just took a while to get things together because I had a lot of orders yesterday. Plus, I had to make some more edge growth butter, and I got that made. And I still got some set aside. So even if, what I have posted sells out tonight, I got more I can post tomorrow. So, y'all, I just want you to take advantage before everything goes back to the regular price as of midnight, the 25th. So I will see you all tomorrow. I'm going to come up with a nice lineup for us to go through because there are so many things to speak about. Shalom, family.